I want to introduce you to perhaps one of my favorite topics inside of these Microsoft Office applications, especially here inside of Excel. We're going to discuss macros. Now, before we get in and start to demonstrate creating macros and manipulating, editing macros and such, I want to talk about just getting a solid understanding of what a macro is all about. And I'm going to do this by giving you an example, a scenario here. Open in front of you, I've got this courses exercise file, and I'm currently on the macro tab. In the macro tab, I've got a simple little table here. Here's the scenario. This is probably something that I'm sure that you do, and if you don't do it currently, I'm sure you'll do it at some point within your career within Excel. This table, it's raw data. There's not much to it. It's probably something that was imported from some other system. Imported in from a database or a text file or maybe some web tool, but it was just data that was dumped down into Excel. Now, it's inside of Excel because I want to do things like sort it and filter it and do calculations, turn it into a pivot table, make it presentable, whatever it is, but I've dumped it into Excel so I can start to work with the data. Now, imagine that this is something that you do every week. Every week I get a new set of data that gets dumped down into Excel. Now, in order for me to really work with it, make it more presentable, I want to format it. I want to go through and do things like put headers at the top. I should have employee ID, last name, first name, department, email address, a phone extension, location, and so on. I should put headers at the top of my document. And I want to reformat the dates. I don't like the standard format here. I want these to be currency. These are their pay rates on the right-hand side. I want to format things, change colors. I want to do all sorts of stuff to this raw data list to make it more presentable. Well, we can do that. I can insert a row and put headers at the top and highlight stuff and reformat it. But once again, this is something I do every week with a new set of data that comes in. Well, this is an excellent candidate for a macro. A macro will allow you to perform all those operations, okay? But as you're performing those operations, adding headers, formatting stuff, and so on, you record yourself doing this. By recording yourself, later on, like next week, when you need to perform these same operations, you hit a single button, and it does it all for you. It essentially replays the recording. This is why I love macros so much, because it's about creating automation. We're going to automate something that we all do just manually within Excel, like formatting and inputting data, record ourselves doing it so that we can automate it later on. You hit a button and your work is done. So let's try this out. We're going to record ourselves creating this macro that's going to clean up this little table. Put headers at the top, reformat the dates, add these as currency, and maybe turn on the filters or maybe do a few other things in there as well. But we're going to record ourselves doing this so that we never have to do it again manually. All right. Now, before we jump in and start to record a macro, telling it to do whatever we want it to do, we got to activate what's called the Developer tab. The Developer tab is an area where we can get into all the various macro tools, among other features. It's not on by default within Microsoft Excel, but it's a simple process of activating it within the interface. And there's actually multiple ways to do this. If I just go up to one of my tabs, top of my screen along the ribbon here, Home, Insert, Page Layout, and so on, if I right-click one of those tabs, I get my right-click menu, and in there I'm going to go to Customize the Ribbon. Inside the Customize or Excel Options area, I'm on the Customize Ribbon section. On the far right, I've got all of my ribbons tabs, and I'm just going to turn on Developer. I'll place a check mark there, I'll hit OK, and I've now activated the Developer tab. Really simple. But now on the Developer tab, far left, I've got a section called Code. And through here, I'll find all of my macro features. The ability to record macros, to get into the Visual Basic window, to get to my macros interface where I can find all the macros that this workbook contains, and a few other features. But first, make sure that you activate the Developer tab. Again, just right-click one of those tabs at the top, customize the ribbon, activate the Developer tab, and you're good to go. Inside of Microsoft Excel, there are a few different ways that you can go about creating a macro. What I'm going to show off here is perhaps the most accessible, the easiest way to create macros inside of Excel. We're going to use what's called the macro recorder, where literally all we do is say record macro. At that moment, Excel is now going to start recording anything we do in the application. Anything. You click on a button, you click on a cell, you click on a worksheet, anything you do inside of Excel will now be recorded. Excel's just busy writing down everything that you do. Okay? So let's try this out. We're going to record ourselves cleaning up this simple little table here. All right, so step one. I've got my Developer tab. It's active. There it is at the top of my screen. On the far left, I've got my code section. And in there, I'm going to go to Record Macro. I'll give that a click. This is going to open up my Record Macro dialog box, where through a little bit of input of our own, we're going to set up our macro. So first thing, I need to name the macro. So I'm going to call this Format Table. Now, I do want to point out that there are some best practices to get into as you're creating macros. One of them, no spaces in your macro names. Excel won't allow it. Nope, sorry, no spaces in the macro name. So just stay away from them. Okay? You could use hyphens. That would work. If you want to kind of simulate a space, great. But just no spaces in general. You can give them shortcut keys. I want to tie my macro to a shortcut key, so the next time I want to format this table, all I do is press Control J. I'll use J as my shortcut key. Okay? You want to be careful. You can override system shortcut keys. So you wouldn't want to do something like Control S, because that's save, right? Don't use that here. Otherwise, it won't save anymore. It'll now run your macro. Okay? So Control J, that's what I'm going to use. We get to dictate where we're going to store the macro, or essentially where the macro is going to be accessible from. In this demonstration, I'm going to store it in this workbook, meaning the active workbook that we're currently within. But we do have a few other options. I suggest looking into these other options here, but one of the most common ones is this workbook. Now we can also give it a description. Something simple. This macro, let's see, this macro places headers on the table and formats the data. Yada, yada, yada. This is not only for you, the creator of the macro, but perhaps for other people, coworkers and so on, that are going to come in and take a look at your macro and work with your macro as well. All right, so you put some type of description in there. Now, that's it. Give it a name, optionally a shortcut key. Where are you going to store it? Where's this macro going to be accessible from? And any additional notes, description that you want to leave behind. Now, I'm going to hit OK, but the moment that I hit OK, we are now recording. Excel will write down everything that you do. So I hit OK. And once again, I am now recording. You can see up here on my Developer tab that my button's no longer record macro, but it's stopped recording. I'm not going to click on it yet. Don't click on it because I haven't done anything yet, but we are recording. All right. So my first step, I'm going to insert a row up at the top of my list here because I'm going to put some headers here. So I'm going to click on row 1, and I'm going to use a shortcut key. I'm going to do Control+. And I'm using the plus key on my number pad. If you use the plus key at the top of your keyboard, you got to do Control+Shift+. Okay, but either method, or you can right click and insert as well, up to you. But remember, Excel just recorded that. It said, hey, they inserted a row up at the top. So now I'm going to insert some headers. We'll call this employee ID. We got last name, first name, we got department, we got email, we got extension, location, hire date, and pay. All right. So once again, I'm recording this. Excel's writing down all these operations, all these little steps that I've just done here. Inserted a row, put in some text as headers. Now let's go back and format it. Let's grab those headers. I'll go to my home tab and I'm just going to format them. Maybe I'll make them blue, white text, make them bold, a little bit larger in size. That looks good. All right, so now I've got some headers. Now I also want to format the pay rate as currency. So I'm going to select that. I'll grab from I2, and I'm going to do a shortcut key here. I'm going to do Control-Shift down arrow. So it jumps me all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to format that. Go to my Home tab. Underneath number, I'm going to turn on the currency symbol here. All right, so now I got dollar amounts. And I want to format the dates as well. So let's grab the H2, Control-Shift down arrow, all the way down to H38. And I'm going to go format that as a different date style. So I don't want just the short date. I don't want long date. I'm going to go down to more number formats. And I'll format this one using this date here. 2-digit, 3-letter, 2-digit sounds good. I'll hit OK. And I've now reformatted my dates. All right, things are looking good. I think I want to make a couple more adjustments here. I'm going to change the column widths here just to make them a little bit wider. Now, once again, remember, everything I'm doing here, Excel is recording it. Oh, look at that. I misspelled something. Well, we'll see how to fix that here in a moment. I could fix it right now, but Excel would record it. It would write it down that, oh, hey, they went back and adjusted that. So I'm going to ignore that for right now, but we'll come back to it. And let's try one more thing. I'm going to click into my list. I'm going to turn on the filters. So I'll click into my list. I'll go to my data tab, and I'm just going to turn on the big filter button there. Now, once again, Excel just wrote that down. Okay. Oh, hey, not only did they add headers and format stuff, but they also turn on the filters. All right. So we've now recorded a macro. Our next step, and a very important step, once you're all done, you've performed all the necessary steps that you want the macro to do, you have to stop recording. So I'm going to go back to my developer tab, top of my screen. Far left, I'm now going to click on stop recording. Very important. Click. I'm no longer recording. Make sure you do that. You don't want to continue recording and go off and do something else like run your macro, try it, test it out, because you're still recording. All right. So we've recorded our first macro. Congratulations. So before we jump in and test the macro out, there's a few things that I found that I want to make edits to. One, I misspelled hire date, hire data. Oops, I need to go in and correct that. Now, I don't want to re-record the macro because I'd have to go back through all those steps again. This will just be a simple little fix that we'll make within the recording that Excel created for us. The second thing I want to do is I want to adjust the column widths. After I added the auto filter feature, it started covering up some of my columns here. You can see that last name has got cut off, and first name and employee ID and location. I just want to make them a little bit wider just to accommodate for the drop-down menus that the auto filter creates. Now, once again, I can re-record, but that's a lot of steps to go back through. We're just going to make a couple of simple changes here. All right, so now to edit a macro, I'm going to go back to my developer tab, top of the screen, and along the developer tab, inside the code section, I'm going to open up the Visual Basic Editor. Now, the Visual Basic Editor is where all the code, it's called Visual Basic or VBA, Visual Basic for Applications. All the code is written that Excel recorded. And we're going to jump into the code. We could spend a whole nother course just on VBA. What we're going to get here is a simple little taste and hopefully pique your curiosity about what you can do inside of Visual Basic. So I'm going to give that button a click. This will open up a completely separate window, brand new window. This is the Visual Basic for Applications window. Now I'm going to maximize that. Along the left-hand side, I've got my Project Explorer. And I'm going to scroll down. When you record a macro inside of Excel through the macro recorder, all the code gets stored inside of what's called a module. So Excel's created this module folder. It's got a single module in there. And if I give it a double click, it'll open up that module. And all of this text here is the code that Excel generated while it was recording my steps. Now, what I would suggest is you take a moment and just look through this, see what's available for you, see what you can pick out, right? Now, what I want to do here is I want to edit the hire data. I need to make it say hire date. So I'm going to scroll through here. There's a line that says active cell.formula R1C1 equals hire data. And all I'm going to do is change that. Hire date. Let's change that A to an E. So that's the first thing I want to change. Now, if I keep scrolling down, there's all sorts of stuff in here. I did a bunch of formatting with my content. Here's where I turn on my currency style. Here's where I did my date format. Right below that, I've got where I started adjusting my column widths. Now, below that, I turned on the auto filter feature. So what I want to do here, really simple, is I'm going to take these columns, these 4 little lines here where I adjusted the column widths. I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to Control X. And I'm going to paste it right down below the auto filter line. So now the auto filter will turn on, and then I'll do the column widths. But right now I've got hard number column widths. I don't want that. I'm going to get rid of these hard numbers. Let's get rid of, nope. Because I took that out, it errored out on me. That's why I'm getting this little pop-up. But I'm going to fix that here in just a moment. So I'm going to ignore that pop-up for right now. I'm just hitting OK. So I don't want those hard numbers, but what I want to do is take the column, like the B column, the C column, the G column, and the H column, and I want to auto-fit them. So I'm just going to replace that text that was there with a line that says auto-fit. And you notice every time I hit my enter key or my down arrow, it capitalized the A and the F in auto-fit. So now I'm going to take column B and auto-fit it, column C auto-fit it, G and H and auto-fit them. That means it's going to automatically adjust to the largest thing inside that column. All right, a couple of simple little changes here, nothing big. I've changed my spelling correction and I reordered my columns width, the auto-fit feature to happen last after the auto filter has already been applied. And we can make other changes. Maybe I need to change my font size, or I don't like something being bold, or take a moment and scroll through this list, see what's available to you, see what you can kind of pick apart and decide, is there other stuff that I want to edit as well? But really simple to edit your macros. It just takes a little bit of knowledge about Visual Basic itself. All right, so we've recorded our macro. We've made some edits to the macro. Now I want to be able to run the macro. I've opened the exercise file back up. I've closed the VBA window that we were looking at in the prior lecture. And I'm currently on the test macro worksheet. This is where we're going to test out the macro that we just created. One button press, and it's going to do all of those operations for us. Insert the headers, format them, auto-fit the columns, format the dates, the currency, and turn on the filters. All in one button press. So let's take a look at how we can create a button and tie it to our macro. Watch this. So there's actually multiple ways to accomplish this. I'm going to show you one of them here. On the Developer tab, top of the screen, inside of the Controls section, I've got an Insert button. And if I go into Insert, the very first button in there is a Command button. Okay? I'm going to give that a click, just one click. Come out to my worksheet someplace and see how I got that little plus sign? I'm going to left click and drag just to create a little rectangle. Now the moment that I let go, it's going to pop open my Assign Macro window. I'll grab the macro that I created, Format Table. I'm going to hit OK. So I've now created a simple little button that runs my macro. Now I can rename it. It's called Button 1 right now. I'm just going to highlight that. We'll call this Format Table. And I'm going to click someplace else. I'm going to click someplace empty. All right, now I've got a button out there. And if I click that button, try this out. It's really neat. One button press. I'm going to give it a click. And I'm done. It's now formatted my table. Added the headers. It's formatted the dates, the currency. It dropped in the drop downs. You can see that it didn't cover up my last name and first name, and my hired data is now hired date. Ooh, I need to fix that employee ID. I need to auto-fit that column. But we can jump back in there and edit the macro. But now one button press, and we got all of that to happen. All of those steps. So now that weekly report that you're always dumping down into Excel, you've now got a button. You hit that button, and you're done. A macro. You're truly automating your experience within Excel. So try this out. Not only create a button, but create some other macros. Think about things that you do inside of Excel that you would like to automate. Creating charts, creating pivot tables, doing simple formatting, building templates, adding calculations, whatever it might be. Think about what you can automate, what's going to make your life easier, streamline your experience inside of Excel through the use of a macro. Try the button out first, and then start creating some other macros. And let us know. Jump into the discussion board. Let me know what you create. or what you would like to create.